Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 56, I merely held back a bit of information. The candidate who walked out of the bushes was wearing an affiliated high uniform. Like Suhao, he also had two sprites with him. They were a little stone elephant, and a dead leaf locust. This particular dead leaf locust was the length of an adult human's arm. It was dull yellow, like the color of dead leaves throughout. It was hidden among the heaps of fallen leaves, the environment becoming its best form of protection. As Suhao looked at the dead leaf locust, its data also surfaced in his eyes. Sprite, dead leaf locust. Element, wood. Spiritual force, 134, limit point reached. Special training, jumping training at the legs, flying speed training. Summary, I'm not a dead leaf, I'm a locust. Other stats, omitted. He had already seen this particular dead leaf locust's stats the day before. After he recognized the sprite, Suhao knew at once who he had run into. An ace student in affiliated high, and also listed as one of the seeded candidates. Gumingrui. You're Suhao from An City First High. A hint of wariness flashed across the depths of Gumingrui's eyes when he noticed Silkworm Baby and Little Fire Crow. He wasn't afraid. However, Suhao was also someone whose level of difficulty to deal with was second only to seeded candidates. Little Fire Crow was even a natural enemy of Dead Leaf Locust, his main unit. It wasn't so bad if he could take Suhao down without any loss to himself, but should his sprites suffer injuries here, it would be rather disadvantageous during the battles in the later stage. Gumingrui didn't want to battle someone of Suhao's level for the time being. As such, he asked, "Are you going to flee by your own will, or do you want me to chase you away?" Suhao was puzzled. The central monitoring facility of the primordial forest area was located in the depths of the massive forest. At the same time, it was also the finishing point that the joint examination candidates needed to head to. As the joint examination went on in full swing, part of the team of judges and the sprite trainers in charge of the students had already made their way to the monitoring center in advance, either by helicopter or by riding their flying sprites there. In the surveillance monitors, they could see candidates being attacked by wild sprites, or candidates battling fellow candidates after encountering each other. There were also candidates fleeing in a panic and even situations where candidates were separated from their sprites. Heavenly King Zhou Whipping, the other sprite trainer judges, the teachers from each school, as well as the staff of the monitoring center, watched and took in all of this. Once in a while, Zhou Whipping would also give a few comments. It hasn't even been 3 minutes since the examination started, and almost 10% of the candidates have been eliminated. One of the judges shook his head. There were students from every school among those who had been eliminated. As the base quantity of students from affiliated high and Yunhua First High was very high, the number of students eliminated from these two schools was also rather high. The teachers of each school searched the surveillance monitors constantly for the forms of the students they taught. Every time they saw a student they knew being eliminated, they would sigh with regret. Lin Wen shouldn't have been eliminated here. He's still too lacking in his observation skills, and ended up walking right into a wild sprite's ambush. Old Chen shook her head. All of a sudden, she noticed one of the monitors. That's Suhao. As a student of An City First High whom they had high hopes in, the moment Old Chen said that Old Gu, Coach Xiang and the others couldn't help but look over. In the monitor, Suhao, together with Silkworm Baby and Little Fire Crow, defeated everyone he came across. Although it looks a little reckless, in the case of candidates with stronger abilities, doing this can save them some stamina instead, remarked Old Chen approvingly. That's right. Moreover, he reacts very quickly. The way he handled the vine snake's ambush earlier was done very well, replied Coach Xiang. As he spoke, his gaze suddenly focused on something. He said to the staff in front of him, "Zoom in on screen 55. That's..." Miss Chen looked over as well. Gumingrui, one of the seated candidates? They've actually bumped into each other. Even though the list of seeded candidates was just a ranking that the examination candidates had made up in private, the ranking itself was supported by a lot of data. Not only were the teachers leading each school poring over the collector's edition intel report repeatedly, but even Heavenly King Zhou Whipping had also complimented it, saying that it was done pretty well. In the intel report, Gumingrui was ranked within the top 10 while Suhao was ranked between the 10th to 20th positions. Gumingrui's dead leaf locust was already at its spiritual force limit. His little stone elephant was also approaching its limit. On the other hand, Suhao only had Silkworm baby at its spiritual force limit. Based on the report's information, the analysis was that there was a pretty big gap between the two of them. "He's too down on his luck," said Old Chen. Old Gu nodded. "It all depends on whether Suhao can retreat intact now. Putting ourselves in their shoes, they shouldn't get into a battle that easily." A huge ball of fire crashed into the ground. Dead leaf locust flew into the air hurriedly. Nevertheless, its wings were still burned a little. Gumingrui was filled with disbelief. The other party was clearly at a disadvantage. How was it that he had the guts to take action against him, and so promptly and decisively at that? And he had even discovered where his sprite was hiding. After summing up both parties' data, Gumingrui believed that Suhao would launch a sneak attack to dispose of his main unit. But he had failed. "You'll pay for that." As he spoke, information on Silkworm baby and Little Fire Crow constantly flashed across his mind, including what the two sprites were skilled in and the unique skills they had mastered. For example, in the case of Little Fire Crow, what he needed to be wary of was its fireball. Even though Flaming Claw was also a fire element unique skill, it was impossible for Little Fire Crow to hit Dead Leaf Locust, which was adept at speed, with it. Speed was also his biggest advantage. "Wander around and look for a chance to use Wing Slash," ordered Gumingrui. Dead Leaf Locust flitted here and there, showing up and disappearing every once in a while. Its speed far surpassed Little Fire Crow's. The other sprite, Little Stone Elephant, stood in front of Gumingrui and protected him. At this point, Dead Leaf Locust charged out from a tricky angle. With its wings spread, it was as if a sharp blade was slashing through the air. Little Fire Crow got such a fright that it thrashed its wings about and flew up further, barely managing to evade the attack. Dead Leaf Locust charged into the forest at the other side. A pale yellow figure followed after it. Charging! Silkworm baby leaped high into the air and lunged at Dead Leaf Locust. However, it accelerated in this instant, causing Silkworm baby to miss. "My Dead Leaf Locust's wings have gone through special training. Even Little Fire Crow can't catch up with it. How is your Silkworm baby going to catch up to it?" Gumingrui took a couple of steps back and maintained a safe distance from Suhao. If he wore them down slowly, he would be able to defeat both of Suhao's sprites. At this point, he heard Suhao give another order. "Chase after it and use string shot." They still had the guts to continue their chase? Wait, what string shot? In midair, Silkworm baby, which was gradually landing, suddenly shot white threads out with great force. The threads clung onto a large tree. The pull from the threads allowed it to appear with a whoosh in front of Dead Leaf Locust right away. A beam of light wrapped in pale green hurtled toward Dead Leaf Locust. "Use gale. Sprite commandeering, accelerate." As though a gust of wind, Dead Leaf Locust weaved about in the forest constantly. However, Silkworm baby, which was as big as a domestic cat, was even faster. Thread after thread clung to the trees, linking with each other seamlessly. It constantly caught up to Dead Leaf Locust, causing Dead Leaf Locust to become worn out as it dealt with Silkworm baby time and time again. How can this be? It has actually mastered string shot. And it's so practiced too. This is clearly a unique skill that even a lot of entry-level sprites find difficult to master, and yet... How did this Silkworm baby? No, how did its sprite trainer manage to do it? And why wasn't this recorded in that collector's edition intel report? In the monitoring center, a teacher from affiliated high also happened to witness this. Able to distinguish the skill in this even more, he couldn't help widening his eyes. Not only has this silkworm baby mastered string shot, but it can also use the skill while in the state of charging. Its level of spiritual force control is quite something. In addition, Silkworm baby is too nimble and its reactions too swift. It must have undergone an immeasurable amount of practice. Gumingrui's dead leaf locust is completely being suppressed. Suhao from An City is actually so much more powerful than what was stated in the intel. Chapter 57, the third day. The teachers believed in the intel list too much because some of the information on it was very much in line with the students they taught. For a while, they had suspected that the candidates hadn't made it themselves, but some big idol boss made it. However, Suhao's silkworm baby broke the facade of the intel list's accuracy with a single move of string shot. After all, string shot is a move that is impossible to be learned by newbie sprites. It's pretty normal that it isn't recorded in the reports. Now, let's see how Gumingrui deals with it. At the start, it was first high teachers like Old Chen and Old Gu, who were worried. Now, in turn, it was the affiliated high teachers worrying about Gumingrui. To be eliminated here. No, to injure the sprite here would be such a pity. It would likely cost him the position among the best 10 in the end. Little stone elephant, go up and roll. Ah! Little stone elephant rushed up, its speed getting faster and faster. Suddenly, it shrunk and rolled over like a huge stone ball. Everywhere it passed, leaves and branches were all crushed by the stone ball. It bumped straight toward Suhao in the distance. Very good. In the monitoring center, the affiliated high teacher's eyes brightened. Now, dead leaf locust is suppressed and can't fight back, but so long as little stone elephant attacks the opponent's sprite trainer, silkworm baby will have to interrupt its current movement to go back into defense. After speaking this way, he felt it was a bit shameful and added, it's a battle without rules, to begin with. The sprite trainer is the biggest weakness. If he's attacked, he can only blame his standing position for being too attractive. Old Chen snorted and knew that this was an academic teacher at one glance. Still, she sneered. Did the one from your affiliated high forget that Suhao still has a little fire crow? It hasn't fought yet. Little fire crow's spiritual force is just a bit more than 100. The teacher from affiliated high felt unsure as he spoke. There can't be a mistake in the intel list in terms of the spiritual force numbers, right? In the forest, Gumingrui's eyes were fixed on the little fire crow hovering over Suhao's head. He simulated the opponent's possible responses in his head. I have to attack Suhao himself, otherwise, I can't force Silkworm baby to go back into defense. His mind was already at its most focused state. Then he heard. Stop playing. Playing? What playing? Gumingrui's heart suddenly made a heavy beat. Silkworm baby, which was playing tag with dead leaf locust in the thick woods, felt a little regretful. Such a good moving target is so rare to come by. It roared, gurgly. The thunder-like sound blew up near the ears of dead leaf locust. Dead leaf locust, which was flying around a tree, trembled. Then, a light yellow figure with a pale green tail smashed down suddenly, like a meteor. Bang! Dead leaf locust was forcefully shoved onto the tree trunk. It hung there like a layer of skin, then slowly slipped down. As it struggled sprite commandeering, persist, covered its body timely. Yet after that light yellow figure rebounded out, light green light dots appeared around its short little legs, which expanded rapidly and became an energy ball the size of a football in the blink of an eye, flying over in a flash. Bang! On the tree trunk so thick it would take 2 people to embrace it, wood chips flew up, and an obvious dent was made from the explosion. The dead leaf locust passed out in the pit. At the same time, little stone elephant had only rushed to the place about a dozen meters from Suhao. A fireball flew over from the front, while an energy ball flew over blasting from the right. The explosion wounded little stone elephant in many places, and its rolling momentum was interrupted. Gumingrui watched Suhao approach with his sprites step by step. He stepped back, then stepped back again, until there was no more space for him to retreat anymore. Don't you come over. The affiliated high teacher, who was staring at the number 55 monitoring screen, was silent for a while. This silkworm baby. So long as he doesn't meet Bing Ning or Lin Mingzheng, it's pretty certain that in cities Suhao can get into the top 10. It's still hard to say. The examination field is complicated, and anything can happen. The most affected were not the teachers from affiliated high. Gumingrui was eliminated, but affiliated high still had other promising students. They just found it to be a pity. After all, no matter how strong Suhao was, how could he be stronger than Bing Ning and Lin Mingzheng, who had already reached entry level? However, Ping City First High, which came last along with In City First High in the previous years, felt a bit envious. They were going to go last together again, but how did their In City First High secretly produce such a genius? Why don't we, Ping City, have one? Suhao, who was walking idly through the forests, actually knew that the battle just now might have been captured by a camera. He didn't find out where the camera was, but he had a feeling that he was being watched. This was due to the gradual strengthening of his soul power. Anyway, after the joint examination is over, it won't be important anymore whether my hidden skill is exposed, and whether my identity as an intelligence thief is exposed. The intel I sold with my own ability is not illegal. In a blink of an eye, it was the third day of the joint examination. With the protection of the light shield from the bracelet, Suhao didn't become miserable. He just looked much more tired on his face. In the last 2 days, Suhao found it a bit hard to sleep in the tent and sleeping bag. But he didn't have it that badly. After Silkworm Baby and Little Fire Crow defeated the wild sprites lingering around this area, no more stupid sprites came to disturb him over the night. Among the other candidates, quite a number were attacked by wild sprites over the night. All these were news Suhao got from chatting after defeating other candidates. Many candidates were eliminated because of fatigue after getting attacked by wild sprites. Wild sprites eliminated many in their sleep. There were also a lot who were eliminated by other candidates. The average candidate actually doesn't have the ability to reach the end at all. Suhao estimated that right now, more than 80% of the candidates had been eliminated. Little Fire Crow. The crow with a cluster of red feathers on its forehead flew onto his shoulder. Squawk! Is it not too far from the finishing point? Suhao held his chin and thought, though I have also defeated a lot of candidates, there is no scoreboard for the joint examination, God knows what rank my score is at now. It's far from secure enough to get into the top 3, I still have to get another, dozens of scores. Reaching the finishing point meant safety, but it also meant losing the last day. Suhao thought about it and made a turn first, walking toward the nearest supply point. I'll get some supplies first and get to the route necessary to get to the finishing point. I can probably get a lot of moving scores there, right? A couple of 100 meters away, below a high tower of supply point, 3 dejected candidates were brought away by the staff of the primitive area. This group has more than 100 points. The next group is our turn. Voices came from the bushes. 10 students from First High started laughing. It's really wonderful to wait here. After our sprites use all their unique skills, those fat sheep would probably lose their battle ability already. If we can catch 1 or 2 seeded players, we may even have a chance at the top 10. That's right. Seeded players are also people, so long as we move fast enough, they won't have any ability to resist. Suddenly, a silk cotton owl flew down from the top of a tree and made 2 coos. His sprite trainer showed a look of joy. Here's another fat sheep, get ready. Everyone quietened down. Their looks went through the grass to the open space out of the high tower. A candidate walked forward with 2 sprites. Their eyes lit up. This one seems to be a big fat sheep. Ready. A boy wearing a hat who headed the 10 first high students slowly raised his hand. However, before he could wave it, he saw that candidate turn his head and walk toward them. He was smiling. Chapter 58, The Power of Silkworm God. Boom! Huge fireballs fell. They didn't hit anyone, but the candidates ambushed in the bushes got startled and rushed out suddenly. They looked at Suhao with surprise and suspicion. How did you discover us? While they were shocked, Suhao was also observing them. 10 people, 10 sprites. Their sprites had yet to reach a stage that they could break through, but they weren't weak either. The really weak candidates had already been eliminated over the past 2 dates. They generally had a spiritual force of around 70 to 80. Suhao's gaze stayed on a big-sized sprite a bit longer. It was a rumbling pig, the evolved form of mini pig. It was as tall as a person, its whole body covered with thick black hair. It looked like it had a pretty strong suppressive aura, and it made a rumbling noise when it ran. Its sprite trainer was the hat-wearing boy. Suhao would call him Boy with Hat for now. Boy with Hat wasn't part of the intel he had gathered. Suhao suspected that Rumbling Pig had stayed in its room since arriving at Battle Preparation Village. After all, Rumbling Pig had another characteristic, that it liked to sleep and made a rumbling snore. Although its spiritual force is not particularly strong, the battle power of evolved sprites is undoubtedly stronger. Most sprite trainers would use the improvements made from the sprite's first evolution to break through into entry level in one fell swoop. However, it wasn't impossible for sprites to evolve before entry level. Among initial form sprites, Mini Pig's battle power was among the lowest, weaker than even Silkworm Baby. It's also pretty reasonable that it evolved in advance. Suhao guessed that Boy with Hat wanted to compete for the top 10's rewards. If he sacrificed a bit of the sprite's potential to get a good ranking, it was also a pretty good deal. Silkworm Baby, which was in the middle of confronting other sprites, looked around it, and somehow felt that someone was speaking ill of it. Don't be scared, he's alone. During the short period that Suhao was observing, the hat-wearing boy had already recovered. He commanded Rumbling Pig to rush up. Other sprites had used the unique skills that they had practiced for months. Granule machine gun. Water arrows. Charging. Suhao had already retreated quietly to a big tree earlier on. At that moment, seeing the countless unique skills flying toward him, he backed away and hid behind a thick tree trunk with a diameter of 1 meter. Countless unique skills hit right onto the thick tree trunk. Without showing his head, Suhao directly shouted, "Silkworm Baby, make it a quick fight." They were too close to the finishing point, after all. Gurgle. Boy with Hat got angry. Rumbling Pig, use Earthquake. Rumble. Rumbling Pig's front feet lifted high and fell heavily. The fat on its body swayed like waves. The ground trembled, while gravel swished up and fell like rain. Silkworm Baby did not dodge, and shrouded in the brilliance of charging it rushed over in the rain of gravel. On the opposite side, a little ground wolf and a grass sheep also started charging. There were also several water element and wood element sprites. Mist came out of their mouths as they prepared to use water arrows and granule machine gun again. Silkworm Baby was still some distance away from them. Gurgle. Along with the sound, a special spiritual force spread, and the sprites that were just performing unique skills suddenly trembled. Fear appeared deep in their eyes. The charging little ground wolf and grass sheep's front legs weakened. The two sprites rolled together. Stunning! I'm super fierce! Silkworm Baby made use of the acceleration from charging and directly rushed past Rumbling Pig. He knocked a dotted mushroom out more than 20 meters, and then forcefully lashed out 4 energy balls, blasting away several sprites that stood a bit further. When Rumbling Pig turned around to chase Silkworm Baby, it was stunned as it looked at the messy ground. Where did all my teammates go? Boy with Hat's face was stiff. It's okay that it can use energy balls. But 4 in a second? Why would a cute sprite be so strong? And Why did the sprites suddenly freeze just now? It's stunning. It was Heavenly King Zhou Weiping who spoke. As the number of candidates decreased, the ones whose performance was outstanding had long received special attention. Suhao was one of the targets of Heavenly King Zhou's special attention. Stunning. A sprite trainer thought for a moment before remembering what kind of unique skill stunning was. Isn't that an illusion element unique skill? Illusion element sprites were rare. And illusion element unique skills were even rarer. As for the skill stunning, they had only seen it before in the teaching plan. 4 energy balls in a second. Turning back, charging in mid-air. String shot and stunning. This silkworm baby. This candidate is very interesting. Heavenly King Zhou Weiping stared at the screen for several seconds. Although this silkworm baby has yet to reach entry level, its spiritual force is very high. It is very rare, really rare for sprites to be cultivated to a point like this. Heavenly King Zhou even felt a little like meeting Suhao immediately. In the forest, Silkworm baby knocked out 5 sprites in an instant, completely stunning other candidates and sprites. After little ground wolf and grass sheep got up from the ground, their legs still shook, and they kept retreating. A candidate on the side suddenly shouted, "It's a chance, use seed grenade." His sprite was the silk cotton owl, which was in charge of spying. It was affected by Silkworm baby's powers but happened to fly to the vicinity of Suhao. Once it heard the command, Silk Cotton Owl flapped its wings and dropped brown bombs, targeting Suhao, who was pressed against the tree trunk. In front are the seed grenades dropped by the Silk Cotton Owl. At the back, he is stopped by the tree trunk. A light of hope appeared in the eyes of Boy with Hat. Rumble. Did it work? Boy with Hat's eyes opened wide. Smoke and mist dispersed gradually. Boy with Hat saw a pair of wings closed together like a giant black egg. The wings opened to show the completely unharmed Suhao inside and a little fire crow with anger in its eyes. It was very angry. Big Boss Silkworm God told me to protect Master properly, but I almost let an accident happen. It's unforgivable. The black wings extended, and their shadow enshrouded Silk Cotton Owl. Coo! A painful scream echoed in the air for a long time. Suhao looked up and walked out of the space behind the tree step by step. Black wings opened behind him like a demon, followed by a demonic voice. "Don't let anyone leave." The 10 candidates ran off in all directions. Unfortunately, no matter how fast they were, they couldn't possibly be faster than Silkworm baby the Spider-Man and Flying Thunder God. The furthest candidate ran out for more than 100 meters, fell down on the ground, and was dealt with by Silkworm baby, which arrived afterward. Gurgle. Good, good, you are the best, I remember all your contributions. In any case, the items rewarded will be used on you both too. Gurgle, gurgle. That one is different. Silkworm baby took a breath to recover its spiritual force after the killing spree. Little Fire Crow took on guard duty. Right then, the grass not far away was ruffling. The 2 sprites and Suhao were on alert. A panting boy rushed out of the grass. The light shield around his body produced a dull yellow glow. This was a sign that his energy value was on a threshold, and he was about to be eliminated. Silkworm baby thought this scene was too attractive, so it couldn't help but throw an energy ball. It blasted, and the hurriedly fleeing boy was pushed onto the ground by the impact's force, and he squealed. His bracelet vibrated. Suhao saw a prompt. Plus 1008 points. He was stunned for a moment, before realizing that this was a huge fat sheep. It was an acquaintance of his Huangji. He's actually feeling in such a poor state? Suhao realized that something was wrong. He looked in the direction Huangji was fleeing and noticed ice sleets forming on the grass. Chapter 59, Judges couldn't sit still anymore. Cold air attacked him. Huangji, who fell onto the ground, rolled and crawled into the distance. A flame-patterned hound covered in frost rolled out of the grass, having completely lost its consciousness. It was the flame-patterned hound with a maximum spiritual force of 144. Suhao had pretty much known who the person chasing Huangji was. A white seal smashed the ice sleet and glided on the ice-covered ground. Behind the white seal was a candidate who stepped on the ice like it was flat earth. There was also a small seashell following beside it. It was Bing Ning, the heir of a certain sect. He didn't know if it had something to with the sprite, but Suhao felt that Bing Ning's face was covered with frost. The look she gave him was very wrong, it was murderous. Oh, yeah, whoever landed the last hit to drop the shield energy below 30% was the defeater. They would get points. Suyu just remembered that he had picked up a pretty good deal. Silkworm baby's added hit was simply, awesome. Gurgle, gurgle. Silkworm baby felt pressure coming from this white seal in front of it. Its little face became serious. A cold aura emerged from the white seal's body, condensing water vapor in the air around it into a mist. On its body was a flowing light of spiritual force, swaying like water. This was the sign of entry level. Suhao's expression was solemn. Information about this white seal appeared in front of his eyes. White seal, entry level, primary. Learned unique skills, icy blade, icy breathing, ice all. Introduction, the seal, yet. Other information. Suhao felt that the introduction of the interface was getting more and more naughty. It had definitely nothing to do with the seals being shown off at him in a certain gaming group chat a few days ago. At that moment, ice all. With a cold command, around the white seal, lying down on the ground on its belly, 3 ice alls appeared. At breakneck speed, they came flying piercingly. Squawk! On the wings of little fire crow, the feathers formed by spiritual force spread, and closed in front of Suhao like 2 huge palms. However, as the sharp ice alls shot over, the black feathers were continuously pierced. Little fire crow kept closing in its wings, and just barely resisted an ice all. The difference between the 2 sprites' spiritual force was too big. Gurgle. Silkworm baby hurried to lash out 2 energy balls, barely stopping the 2 other ice alls. After the black wings stopped the remaining waves of the explosion, it finally couldn't stand it anymore and broke apart, turning into countless black feathers and fluttering. Flaming needles. Granule machine gun. Little fire crow raised its height, flapped its wings, and shed countless flaming feathers. Silkworm baby's speed was even faster. The countless granules sprayed out gathered into a light stream, attacking Bing Ning, who was standing at the back. Reciprocity was necessary for propriety. Suhao is impulsive, at this time, he should retreat. When old Chen saw this, her heart tightened. Faced with the granule machine gun, Bing Ning didn't choose defense but countered the attack with an attack. The white seal breathed out an icy cold breath, while the little seashell produced a rolling water stream, which covered her like a bubble. Boom! The white breath collided with the green light stream, and the ice element spiritual force and the wood element spiritual force continued to collide against each other, annihilating each other. None actually could overcome the other. How is this possible? Isn't Silkworm baby still below entry level? This is granule machine gun? It's more like a cannon. The affiliated high couldn't help but speak. Heavenly King Zhou also showed a slightly surprised look. A sprite before entry level, if it didn't compress spiritual force, maybe the amount of spiritual force of the 2 would be similar, but when displayed, the difference was definitely huge. After a short stalemate, the ice element spiritual force gradually overcame the wood element spiritual force. Silkworm baby no longer collided against the white seal with its spiritual force. It used string shot, and its figure disappeared. Its breath left a straight line of ice sediments. Bing Ning looked around, its light yellow body traveled through the woods swiftly. Under the pull of string shot, Silkworm baby was even faster than most sprites who were good at speed. She frowned involuntarily. Suddenly, 3 energy ball flew over from 3 directions. The white seal hurriedly produced 3 hexagonal ice mirrors. The energy balls slammed onto the ice mirrors and the mirror surfaces shattered, while the shock wave sent the dead leaves around it flying up. Suhao actually suppressed Bing Ning. A teacher from another school said, full of shock. The affiliated high teacher wasn't too concerned. It merely appears to be a suppression. Silkworm baby used a unique skill enough to compete with entry-level sprites. It probably came at the expense of consuming more spiritual force. Besides, it is on the offense. The consumption of its physical and spiritual forces are also large. It definitely won't last long. The affiliated high teacher who spoke smiled. Most importantly, Silkworm baby can't possibly have any other hidden moves, but Bing Ning is sure to have one or two deadly moves yet, maybe it can be seen in a while. I don't think so, though. A judge smiled and said, what fun is it if Bing Ning or Lin Mingzhang get the championship? Today, I will just support this Silkworm baby. I think it can create a miracle again. In the forest, the white seal attempted to shoot 2 ice owls, but it couldn't hit Silkworm baby, so it gave up and wasted no more spiritual force. Its owner, Bing Ning, looked at Suhao, who hid in the forest and dared not even show his head, and took a deep breath. Use raining. Ice storm. In the sky, countless icy cold raindrops fell. They came crashing down, getting denser and denser. This wasn't an attack unique skill, but a productive one, used for watering farmlands. But, under the icy storm, the ice-cold raindrops became sharp steel needles, which then formed rolling waves of ice under the storm's blowing and little seashells assisting control of the water flow. It roared and swept towards the surroundings. This is a combination of unique skills, with super strong control. An heir of a sect, indeed. One can't see that she's only a high school student at all. The combination of unique skills had so much impact that the surrounding trees started rustling, and instantly, ice owls formed on its branches. Waves of cold air dispersed, and the rolling ice wave pounced on Silkworm baby like a huge, scary mouth. Even little Fire Crow was so affected that it smashed down a fireball, only to be extinguished halfway. It could only return to Suhao's side pitifully, igniting the huge flaming claw to dispel the chilliness around it. Suhao already couldn't see Silkworm baby. The raging ice storm drowned the constantly running body. Bing Ning used the complementary combination of 2 sprites to achieve large-scale destruction that was almost impossible at the stage of newbies. At the monitoring center, several monitoring footages were already blurred by the harsh wind, ice, and snow. They couldn't see the battle process clearly. It gave them an itch. A judge walked out with its sprite. Hey, where are you going? The judge said in all seriousness, this battle's too big. As the judge, I must be on the scene to make sure no accidents happen. Hey, the last 30% of our sprite trainer bracelets have the largest protection intensity, it can totally. Hey, why are all of you going? Judges and team leading teachers left hurriedly. Some couldn't wait to let their flying sprites carry them to the scene once they stepped out of the monitoring center's gate. You can't see anything anymore if you're slow. In the blink of an eye, there were only the staff and a few judges left. Heavenly King, why have all of them left? Zhou Whipping's face was expressionless, but his eyes stared hard at the surveillance footage covered by the ice storm. He was very irritated. If not for his duties and pride as a heavenly king, he also wanted to go on to the scene. Chapter 60, That Devil, He's Here. In the forest, a team of 3 was walking toward the supply point tower. According to the map we got from the supply box, we are probably near the finishing point now, right? Yap, but we still have a large part of the day. Should we find some more wild sprites to get points? Wild sprites are getting harder and harder to find now. At the start, they actively attacked when seeing us, now all of them ran away when smelling our odor. Unless we get points from other candidates. I think. Never mind, it's good enough that we are not the ones giving others points. Yes, yesterday I saw the sprite of a seated candidate settling sprites similar to ours in only 2 moves. We can't afford to offend them, we can only hide. After getting the supplies, we shall rush to the finishing line, don't get eliminated in the last minute. They had already seen the white tower from afar and walked forward carefully. Suddenly, one of them shuddered. Did you guys feel it's getting colder? He looked down, saw the energy of his bracelet slowly dropping, and he was suddenly shocked. Someone is attacking us, who is it? His 2 teammates looked around cautiously and finally found out what was wrong. Over there, why is there ice? It doesn't make sense, we are at the primordial forest area, not the primordial frosted forest area, right? At that moment, a large golden bird flew over their heads, and they caught a glimpse of a man lying on his belly on it. That bird seems to be the bird of a judge. What happened after all? Bursts of roars like demons' cries echoed, so the 3 dared not stay any longer, and escaped. In the forest, the ice storm raged. Wherever the rolling waves of ice went past, trees seemed to be shaved bald, with only bare trunks left in the blink of an eye. On the golden bird, the leaning judge was stunned, his eyes wide open. Gosh, this destruction can be caused by an entry-level sprite? Can't those 2 sprites of Suhao have been frozen into frozen sprites, right? He slapped himself. Why do none of the candidates I have high hopes in finish till the end? A marionette wrapped old Chen in itself and floated into mid-air. Upon seeing the scene in the distance, old Chen was also immensely shocked. That Bing Ning? No, are all heirs of sex so strong? Below, in the frosted forest. Achoo! Suhao sneezed. He looked around, and there were ice sediments everywhere, it wasn't very easy for him to even shift position. Fortunately, he was relatively far away, and he had a big strong tree to keep out the storm. In the distance, the ice storm raged, and sounds of ice alls breaking kept echoing. Sprite commandeering, persist. He had once discussed with Silkworm Baby how large-scale attacks should be dealt with. They had come up with several different methods of dealing with it. However, at this time, Suhao could only trust Silkworm Baby's judgment, and gave Silkworm Baby some brief words of encouragement through the contract, cheering it on. 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Suhao silently estimated the time. Suddenly, swish! A soft sound of a sharp blade piercing through a tree trunk came. In the forest, Silkworm Baby's figure leaped amongst the trees. Many roaring ice waves came chasing from the back and got nearer and nearer. It suddenly stopped. Its mouth bit on a few spat out white threads, its spiritual force connected onto it and produced a change of its nature. With the backward momentum of charging, it forcefully pulled. The white threads, which had long covered the whole surrounding areas, except for a few broken by the direct impact of the ice wave, all became thread ropes as sharp as knives, and they were tightened and drawn backward at once. Stout tree trunks were directly cut through, and the ice alls on the ground were also cleanly broken through. The white seal that was just manipulating the ice wave was suddenly shocked. In the next instant, the sharp threads swept across its body. Pfft! White seal and little seashell were lifted and thrown up high. Deep wounds appeared on their bodies. Carried by the threads, they flew out backward. Bing Ning was similarly pulled up and sent flying. A dull yellow glow appeared on her protective shield, but it also allowed her to see the gradually shrinking sharp threads on her body. Use tail blade. While enduring the pain, the white seal's tail glowed with white light and cut down forcefully. Clang! The tail blade cut off the sharp threads. Little seashell wrapped Bing Ning up with a water current and escaped into the distance without hesitation. An energy ball flew over from the depth of the frosted forest, but the roaring white seal's ice all intercepted it. The ice wave, which lost the manipulation, turned into balls of pure spiritual force, dissipating in the air. The ice storm also dissipated quickly. Suhao's head emerged from the backside of the tree. He saw that Silkworm baby was beating its failing enemy the seal, and commanded Little Fire Crow to go up and join the attack. At that moment, layers of halos shrouded White Seal, and within less than a second, the huge White Seal disappeared in the eyes of a human and two sprites. After being stunned for a moment, Suhao finally understood. This is summoning? It can actually be used like this, hey! Gurgle. Silkworm baby, agitated, flew up to the top of the tree with a string shot, but it already couldn't be seen. At that time, the big tree that was cut off halfway across the trunk slowly smashed down under the lingering shock waves' ravage. Bang! Smoke and dust filled the air. The monitoring screen went black immediately, along with the face of Heavenly King Zhou. In the distant sky, he looked at the forest, which had turned white, and a large area of it was buried in ice. The two judges hugged the necks of their respective sprites, looked at each other, and eventually asked, "Is this really the examination field of high school students?" On the first floor of the monitoring center, the resting hall, there were constant sounds of slurping noodles in the hall. The candidates who had endured cold and hunger for more than 2 days in the primordial forest area finished the noodles, and some fell asleep sitting right there. On the table of a young man eating noodles, there were already 5 empty bowls. He was even moved to tears, eating. It was spicy. He looked up toward a familiar student who just sat down opposite him, so he couldn't help but ask, "How's your score? How many points do you have?" The candidate opposite him was so dejected and upset that he didn't feel the slightest warmth even from eating the hot noodles. "I was eliminated." He ground his teeth. There was a guy who was obviously super strong, yet he liked to ambush and make sneak attacks everywhere. I don't know how many people were eliminated by him. He's pretty much a devil. Devil? Bing Ning or Lin Mingzheng? Certainly not Bing Ning. Some candidates that had come even earlier moved their lips to gesture toward a corner. There, beside Bing Ning with a distant and defensive look, lay a white seal wrapped with treatment bandages. It looked really miserable. Then it's Lin Mingzheng. Young Master Lin is stronger, after all. No, that devil is called Suhao, with a sneaky silkworm baby. Suhao. The candidates that had not encountered him felt a little disbelief. Isn't that guy just a student from an city? Not even a seated candidate. It must be an excuse these eliminated weak people gave for themselves. What a shame. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the hall. A figure walked in with 2 sprites. The young man eating noodles saw the student sitting opposite him freeze instantly, and then pick up his bowl, get up, and leave. "Hey, why are you?" He didn't understand. Then he heard a low exclamation from another table nearby, "Suhao the devil! He's here!"